Finally got through that update. Can't believe it's been 10 years, 9 years for me playing the game. Welcome to Still Plays. This is a talk video, and we are going to be breaking down that title update. Now, by this point, I assume all of you guys are well versed in it. It took me a while to get through everything, to script everything. So we are going to be focusing just on my reactions to the most relevant parts. This isn't going to be super in-depth. It's still going to be very long. And we'll just bring in some contextual information so we can all follow along here. Looking at the era isolation, the levels, the events, the marquee releases and the cadence, the economy changes to signal data, to relics, to the scavenger, and then looking at Relic 10, Relic Delta, a couple quick reactions to that, and then some of the quests. This update is going to be a massive overhaul to how we interact with the game daily, and I think that's extremely positive. It's going to allow CG to make consistent changes that are not game-breaking while avoiding issues of power creep. It means that these eras will allow for CG to permanently release content in ways that will be relevant and worth interacting with. We're not going to see certain game modes expire anymore, where you see like Galactic Wars or Cantina or Squad Arena. All of those game modes have died off. We don't have to worry about that anymore with how eras have been designed. And along with that, CG is expanding the access to eras. That is good. The new information that we have here is that we will have weekly episode quests, era challenges to test out those marquee squads. We're going to have a Coliseum, and this is all going to culminate into a journey guide event with an associated unit. Now, this is a ton, and I am skeptical that CG can actually maintain this kind of release schedule. I think it's exciting and a great sign, but I don't want CG to overcommit here. Now, they do mention some non-standard eras. I think this may be more frequent than this post implies, and I don't think that's a problem. I encourage them to do more of the non-standard eras that don't culminate in a journey guide unit. I don't think that's sustainable. I think that is a recipe for burnout on their employees. Now, any way that they pull this off, I think is going to be great for the health of the game. It means that this is going to be around for a lot longer. But I don't want CG to overpromise and underdeliver like they have with the fast raid schedule. That did not happen. I was skeptical that was possible, and I turned out to be right on that one. So while I have my doubts, I am excited about this. Era isolation, now I will definitely have some caveats about the monetization of it. We'll talk about some of it in a little bit. But overall, I think eras being separated out from the rest of the game is a smart move by CG. Making the existing content legacy content, making this the method for how marquees are delivered to us, and having the events exist independently within the era solves a lot of the design issues of older content within the game. This gives CG a venue to keep delivering us new content in a way that won't grow as stale as quickly like we've seen happen to game modes like Conquest. But what we really need to understand here is that the game is going to be heavily about these eras. This is a complete overhaul to the marquee system, how we're going to gain them and develop them. And for free-to-play players, we're really going to need to understand this and appreciate it, because there are going to be some pay-to-play and pay-to-win issues here, and our time in game is how we're going to be able to counteract some of that. But there will be hard things for us free-to-play players to deal with, because one of the things that this addresses is the issue of hoarding. We're not going to be able to hoard resources to circumvent some of the monetization of the game. So we're going to have to be very judicious with our resources, and we really need to understand the journey guide unit, how we need to level our marquees up in order to gain access to the event, unlock the character, and to have the most amount of development on every element of the journey guide character and our marquee characters before the era ends. The journey guide character is going to require the 5 era marquees. We need them at 4 stars and at era level 45. That's going to unlock the journey guide unit at 4 stars. For 5 stars, the journey guide unit is going to require the Marquees at 5 stars. And this is probably going to be pretty difficult free to play. We're going to have to be focused on it. Don't overly focus on a single Marquee character. Make sure you are developing for the purposes of the journey guide unit, because one of the things that we don't know here, and they have left this vague, is that after the era and what they say is a significant amount of time, the journey guide unit will become a legacy unit and appear presumably in the journey guide. That may be 6 months, it may be 12 months, we have no idea. So as free-to-play players, there is going to be a long period after these eras are over before we are able to finish the journey guide units, which is going to give a big advantage over to all of the whales. Now this sounds negative. In some ways it is negative. It means people who spend will have a big advantage. That's going to shake things up in Grand Arena, but for me it's going to kind of recall some of the early days of the game when we had more legendary releases. It's going to feel a little bit more like that, because the thing with legendary releases is we would have 5-star units, 6-star units, 7-star units. We'd have a variety, and that is something that we just really haven't seen as much with the types of character releases that CG has made. And I like to see differentiation in our rosters. It's just a small window of opportunity for it. Era levels. Now this is CG's solution to the design issue of resource accumulation, because they would have certain choke points with stun guns, carbantes, and we would develop our rosters to a certain point where they were no longer an issue and we could start accumulating them to a certain degree. CG then created Kairos to be a new choke point, but even with Kairos, eventually they would get easier and easier. This was no longer going to happen because our resources to develop these marquee characters are only going to exist within the era. So we no longer need to worry about gear in the same way, and CG doesn't need to worry about things becoming easier and easier for players, because what happened with the old system is they would add a new marquee and we'd immediately gear up the character. Gear was no longer an issue. And that meant no opportunity for monetization, no frustration points. And overall, like, this is something that I was very good at. I like moats. Moats mean opportunities for a player like me who's better at applying gear and managing gear than other players. For me, resource management was the fun part of the game. That's why I've made all these various spreadsheets to track the gear, because I like interacting in the game that way. That means I'm not interacting the game in a way that I found very enjoyable. But I think for most players this will be fine, and this it solves the design problem for CG, and fine, I'll find other ways to interact with the game that I enjoy. Now, I will still be trying to figure out the best way for free-to-play players to get as far as they can with this. We're going to be earning our era materials through event participation with the Coliseum, marquee events, era journey events, the episode track milestones, or they can be purchased. And one of the things that I do think is a little smart about this is this allows for different kinds of monetization. Before, with the old marquees, you basically whaled out to the full extent, or you didn't. Maybe you'd spend a little bit on crystals, maybe get to 4 stars. The era battles fixed some of that. It encouraged a little bit of spending, but now you can spend a little bit or a lot and still see something for the money spent. And that I think is actually a very smart play by CG. That while a minnow, a whale, or a kraken, there is still going to be some way for your money spent to be relevant. It means pushing a little further in stars, a little further in levels, and gaining more daily resources as a consequence. And seeing a payoff earlier. If you do it earlier, you're going to benefit longer. So I think this is well done by CG. It's a smart way to do it. Although it does mean there's going to be a widening gap between players who spend and who don't. But it also is only going to exist within the era itself. At least this is what I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that for the free-to-play player, it turns out fine. And I think it's going to be mostly fine for free-to-play players, because what CG is saying is that where we are going to be able to get is to this era level 65. Or when it converts over to a legacy unit, we're going to have a level 85 gear 12 character with base ability 7. That's basically where we are now. with free-to-play. Like, we'd have a 3-star character that was usually around gear 11. Now with the changes, gear 12 or relics. The only question I have is based on the timing of when the marquee units become farmable. That is technically more than what it is now, but if it's time to be right after the era ends, which is what it kind of sounds like, that's fine. I don't really care. Now with the Coliseum, this unlocks at player level 10. The bosses rotate daily. That I like. There's going to be 4 or 5 bosses. They talk about it a little bit about it later, but it keeps it fresh. So we'll have an opportunity throughout the era to interact with multiple bosses. It'll change up. Things aren't going to get stale. And with these bosses, we're going to try to achieve high scores, and the high scores are going to earn rewards. There's going to be one-time milestones, also a daily leaderboard, and I guess it's going to be somewhat similar to like the squad arena. This though, that's going to be dominated by whales. It's not a major concern of mine. It is going to be the primary place that players earn the new Relic 10 materials. That's why it's going to be dominated by whales. It's also why I'm not too concerned about Relic 10 until it goes live, and why I would advise all of you to not rush for it. We need to feel this stuff out, figure out what kind of opportunities there are for Relic 10 materials for free-to-play players. One of the other things that we're going to be seeing though is that with each era, our leaderboards reset. That's potentially good. If we're in a whale heavy leaderboard one era, maybe the next era we won't be, but it means things are not going to be very consistent or reliable. But it means, like if you're in a terrible squad arena right now, or were back in the day when it was relevant, you won't be suffocated out. Or someone like me, who my account has long benefited from a dead fleet arena, that might not be something that I can take advantage of to the same degree. But what is nice for us free-to-play players is when we achieve our high score, or I mean, I guess this place applies to whales too, but when you achieve your high score, you don't have to keep playing the game mode. That can just stay in place. So we're able to interact with this as much or as little as we'd like. And I think with the rotating bosses, that's multiple opportunities throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the era, to just play with the game mode, explore the game mode, and just try out different things with these various bosses. And that will keep things fresh. And of these first 4 bosses, it's the Pirate ATST that I am looking forward to the most, because the rest of them, I don't really care. But the pirate one, that was a great episode of Mando. Era challenges, this is quick, replaces galactic challenges. I think that's good. I didn't really care for galactic challenges, especially with the changes to episodes. It was a mess. And this will be available during the weeks between marquee releases. So the more we develop a marquee, presumably, the better that we do here. We have a full week of access as well to complete the challenges, so this isn't going to be something that we need to rush and complete quickly or deal with daily. And that gets to the next point of the time in-game issue. Some of this we've already touched upon. CG is being mindful of the increased time in-game, so there are elements like with the Coliseum, we can submit a best score, so we're not having to play with that daily if you don't want to. We can play as much or as little as we'd like. Also, Relic Delta is going to make territory battles and conquest faster, which this is valuable to me because if you've been watching the roster videos, I have been talking about for a while now my being very interested in territory battle armies that would allow me to auto nodes because I don't like that game mode. And with Relic Delta, it means I don't need to consider territory battle armies anymore. I can just do the Relic Delta, which applies to more game modes, and have that issue be eliminated. Now I can just auto in peace. At least that's how these things are sounding, and I'm probably going to be looking to optimize my Relic Deltas on characters that they are going to benefit in more places, at least in the near term. We'll be talking more about that once we have a better feel for them. Nice big visual update in Cantina, moving some things around as a response of this. That's positive, not much to say there. And we also have this section that is alluding to some future seasonal content, loaned units, a PvP mode in eras. We'll address this whenever it appears. This sounds a little wishy-washy to me, where we don't know how committal this is going to be. I'm sure we're going to see it, but to what degree and in what way on which timeline, we'll hit it when it shows up. Legacy changes, we have our marquee cadence, we have relic economy changes. The big thing with marquee changes is there's going to be some differences here. The big one that I care about is when a unit becomes farmable, when they're added to a node. It is going to be 13 weeks after their Marquee event, which is about 4 weeks longer than it is now. But I didn't check the math on this. What I think the idea is going to be is it's going to be about a month after Era's end. So we're not really going to notice a difference. I think that is going to be functionally more or less the same, even though it's technically an increase. As long as it's starting like a month after Era's end, whatever, I'm fine with it. I can get used to it. But what I would do as a player to prepare for it is get your resources ready for when that unit transitions over to a legacy unit, especially for us free-to-play players. Now, we can assume that that character is going to be gear 12. We're just going to have to bank some of those Mark 12 materials and some signal data so that we can rapidly bring them up into relics at the various different levels as they become available. It's stuff that we can prepare for. We'll have a little bit of extra time to do that, and that'll soften the blow to a certain degree, especially with the relic economy changes here, because this has a lot to it. So we have a few big elements. We have the reduced pinch of gear and relic materials, increase the inflow of relic resources to the majority of players, and improve access to relics. Now, the first point here on reducing the pinch of gear and relic materials, this is going to be meaningless to the majority of the player base. This is going to apply to middle game players and newer accounts, but I doubt any of those are watching this channel right now. This is more of a niche product for you guys. So while this is technically true, it will be technically easier in practice that it is not affecting most of us because we're just not having an issue with those gear resources. The biggest benefit though is going to be on Chirotechs, because we won't have to use Chirotechs to level up characters to gear 12 anymore. That saves more Chiros for other places within the game. That is going to help most of us. Well, it technically helps all of us. It's going to shift about 300 Chiros on average per character over to the scavenger or other locations. The bullet for increased amount of relic material inflows. This is going to be, we're going to see more relic resources, including signal data as a reward. That's going to help a good amount, especially that signal data, because that signal data is a major pain right now. And we're going to see an even larger demand on signal data because the rest of our rosters are developing so much faster. It just means more characters need more signal data now. And with improved access to relics, we're seeing some changes with the scavenger. The biggest things are going to be the arrow magnifiers and the droid brains. With the arrow magnifiers, Chiros are now a key resource in fabricating the arrow magnifier. I know this is good news to anyone with a developed account. If you're still working on gear though, on Chiros, still developing out the rest of your roster, you don't have a ton of relics, I wouldn't be worried about this right now. Focus on taking more characters to relics, and then you can shift Chiros over to arrow magnifiers or onto droid brains. Like droid brains, that's helping me out the most. I still have a decent bank of arrow magnifiers from the old challenge raids, and that's because I'm very careful with how quickly I level up characters to higher level relics. I try to do less, and because of that I haven't depleted my arrow magnifiers as quickly, and I would say that's how you should approach Relic 10, Relic Delta, because we do not right now understand what our inflow of resources are going to be. So hold on to them, save them until we have a clear idea. Now, droid brains, this is what's been slowing me down the most. And now I can take a ton of those Chiros because I'm past the point where I'm really too worried about Chiros. I'm going to be able to take those Chiros and shift them into droid brains. And that's just going to help me access higher level relics more quickly. This is very positive change. And it really means that for a lot of the player base, droid brains and arrow magnifiers are no longer major choke points. We're still going to need to consume a decent amount of them to convert them into these pieces, but once you fully relic your account, that's all you're going to be doing with Chiros. Now, with the new relic signal data recipe, this is another one of those places where if you're a whale, you have a super developed account, this is going to be more relevant to you. Now, I'm not going to be too concerned about rushing this stuff too early. I'm going to be working on taking more of my account up to Relic 7 before I worry about this too much, but I will do this on the margins. The math, though, has been done on this. You want to farm the fragmented signal data. Even though it's worth fewer points, you farm it in quantities that are large enough because of its larger drop rate where it's going to make up for it, and it maths out to being the better. I think Arnold just had a video on it, and you can check that one out. I'm not going to do the math for you guys. Just fragmented is what you want. The next one, this is huge. This is going to make everything way easier. We have the changes to the raid shipment economy. Instead of using Mark III currency, we can now use Mark II currency to purchase Electrium conductors and Zinbidi cards. That's where I was primarily using my Mark III raid currency, because you could buy them up quickly and there's a high demand on them. I'd also use the impulse detector, but the impulse detector is staying as a Mark III resource. But the big change, carbonate circuit boards, bronzium wirings, those can be purchased with Mark I raid currency. And if you have a fully developed roster, like I do, it's not fully Relic, but it's everybody's gear 12 minimum except for a couple niche characters that I don't want higher. There's no place for me to spend the Mark I currency. I was just grabbing stuff to grab it. Converting that stuff is really not worth the time. So I was grabbing credits, I was grabbing the mod slicing materials, and that was it. I'd grab some other gear pieces to grab other gear pieces, but I'm getting closer and closer to being done with those. Now we can grab the carbonate circuit boards and the bronzium wirings, and you want to grab both in massive quantities, as much as you can, as much as possible. Don't care about the chromium transistor and the rhodium heatsink. Those were basically free already. It's nice that you can buy them now, but if you've watched my guild store video, it already tells you how to grab those pieces. They were already a non-issue. And so I wouldn't be using any Mark I currency to grab them when the carbonate circuit boards and the bronziums are so much more valuable. And what this really means is that we are no longer spending crystals to get carbonate circuit boards, which that's a savings of 1,000 crystals or so on a very consistent, regular basis. Maybe even us free-to-play players want to be considering a little bit of crystal spend on the marquee characters if there's value in it. That's something that we need to pay attention to when we see what the monetization, what the crystal use in those eras is going to look like. The other legacy change is updating rarity requirements. We're just able to push our characters a little further in relics with fewer stars than previously. That's overall very positive. It means 6 stars becomes an important milestone because that means we can use datacrons with a 6-star character, at least a dedicated cron to a specific character, because they'll be able to hit Relic 5. Now Relic 10, Relic Delta, this is stuff you're going to see me talk more about as I get my hands on it. It's something that watching people with test accounts only gets you so far. For me, feeling it, how my characters feel about it, how they look in Grand Arena, and how often we come across accounts that are dealing with them, that is going to tell me a whole lot more. But what I would say about both is I wish CG was doing more. Like Relic 10 to me is not enough. I want multiple Relic levels, like when Relics were first introduced, because what that meant was having a wide range for players to choose to bring individual characters to. It meant roster differentiation, because the thing that I hate the most about Grand Arena is that our accounts are all exactly the same. We're putting all the same teams down on defense. We're all using the same counters. We all have the same characters at the same relic levels, and it's boring. I want them to throw a bunch of progression at us all at once, so that if one of us wants to get weird, we can do it. That was what was fun about the early days of Grand Arena, and I wish we could get back there. And I wish they would just throw a bunch at us all at once without changing the minimum requirements. Like, still make a minimum requirement like Relic 9, but give us up to Relic 12 to make things weird. Now, the episode track bullet, this is nothing important here. They're just telling us that some things are moving around. The rewards is the most relevant thing, that these are changing to be relevant to the eras. We've already touched upon that. That is all fine. Lightspeed tokens. This is actually great news to me because currently these tokens have been worthless for my account, but the fact that they're being improved means I might be able to actually use them. Because with my roster, what I had done is I took everybody as soon as I unlocked them up to gear 11. So I already had every character in the game beyond that level. And then over the past year, I took them all up to gear 12. And at so when Lightspeed tokens were released, there was no one on my roster that I could apply them to. It was useless. It's good for older accounts, but now by making these a little bit more useful to the player base, I can actually use a token. And it means that the remainder of my roster, that if you watch my roster videos, I had already talked about that being a goal of my account, to finish relicking my entire roster. I can now use Lightspeed tokens as one of the ways to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we hit the quest portion later in the video. But now we got to get to Marquees. Our anniversary era Marquees. Now, overall, I really like these. I like that we are getting characters that won't be meta defining. That to me is always fun. I don't think we always have to have characters that are at the top level. I also like that there's a potential that some of these characters are going to be able to round out some older squads that haven't been so useful and make some old armies potentially relevant. Now, before we get into any of these characters, just keep in mind that I haven't read through those kits in detail yet. We will be releasing videos on those kits soon, but you're just going to get my quick responses to a number of these characters. Now, Stormtrooper Luke, this sounds intended for an interim squad, but I'm hoping that it can make Akbar and Leia armies relevant. He has a very strong basic ability that inflicts a pretty strong debuff that is both like stagger and buff immunity. If we can make that assist works with Akbar, it could have a very strong impact and make that army relevant again. And what you need for the Akbar army is the weakest character he's going to assist on Akbar. So we're just going to need to mod him accordingly to make sure that he's weak, so that he's assisting a lot and spreading around that new debuff on his basic. IG-90, this is a huge character for me. I love the Afra squad. I'm going to be very aggressive about IG-90. He also addresses a lot of my major concerns about the squad. It's going to give her a tank, and he's going to be providing a lot of the survivability that she really needs, with a heal, protection up, and a stealth for Afra so that she can't get targeted. Now, Yoda and Chewie, member of the Tarful squad, that's needed. I want Tarful to be useful, but as far as Wookiees go, I don't care about this one. Uninteresting to me, whatever. There are Wookiees that I want in game, and the fact that we're getting this weird mishmash instead of a more relevant Wookiee, that's a little disappointing. But because I like Tarful, we'll explore it. Now, Asajj Ventress Dark Disciple, I just started watching Tales of the Empire, and we'll do Tales of Bounty Hunters or whatever it's called very soon, because I like Asajj a lot. This is a character I am interested. Now, she's going to be a Sign of Django squad member, which is weird, not relevant right now. It will be nice to have a use for these characters that we've invested in, especially that I've invested in, because I volunteered to develop Sign of Django to Relic 9 for territory battles to help out the guild. And I haven't gotten a lot of use out of it except for one datacron. I'd like to see more use, but maybe this is just going to be territory wars only, so I'm going to be careful about this character, but I am paying attention. Inquisitor Barriss, though, this is interesting. Creates a new 3v3 Inquisitor squad and a Seer Junda squad member, which I like because that fifth spot on a Seer Junda squad was always a question. So she sounds very important. Another character that I'm definitely investing in. And Darth Vader Dual Zen, they specifically refer to him as an elite Marquee. And he's going to be joining his new master and the Emperor's Hand, which is Mara's Jade. So that means this sounds like the official end to the traditional Palpatine Starkiller squad, and Starkiller is probably just going to be a member of a Sirjunda Malicos squad. But again, I haven't read through these kits yet, so maybe I'll feel differently in a moment. But this next one, we have Maul Hate Fueled. This is fun, as this is going to be our journey guide character. He's intended to be paired with the Stranger, the Conquest character that we are currently working on, character that I also like a lot. Had they released him prior to the Clone Wars era Maul, I'd be more excited. I'm a little less excited because of that, but I still love Maul, so this is definitely something I'm going to be pushing for. But I also haven't read the Strangers kit yet, so we'll talk more about him after I do the Strangers kit reveal, and when I do, you can be sure that I'll be talking more about Maul. But the big thing, free-to-play players, just make sure that we are building out our marquee characters in a way specifically targeted to unlock and gain access to utilizing Maul for the end of the era. Now, of the 6 characters here, I'm going to be prioritizing Vader Duel's End, IG-90, and Barriss. They're the ones that are going to get pushed a little bit further than others, assuming that we have the resources to do that. And then if I can do a 4th character, it'll be Asajj. You can expect Stormtrooper Luke and Yoda and Chewie to be a little less developed. That may change though once we get into the eras and see that maybe a certain character is going to be more important for us finishing better on the leaderboard or performing better in the Coliseum or in the challenges. We'll kind of just feel it out, but that's my initial reaction to all of these characters. Part of this era, we are also getting the 10th anniversary quest celebration. We're going to have a journey quest log where these are going to be, and they're going to be rewarding lightspeed tokens and Zeta materials and Omicron abilities, and a healthy amount of Amis and Zeta materials. We're definitely all going to want to do these. Now, they did say the lightspeed tokens, it's going to be more beneficial to earlier players, but even a player like me with a very developed account, there's about 10 or so of these that I'm going to be able to utilize. And what I would recommend is, if you're looking at developing some of these characters, and I was, then just pay attention to what these lightspeed tokens are so that you can hold off on placing resources onto those characters and use the lightspeed token instead. Because some of them is like Harrison Dula, Sabine, I can't use those. Ezra I can't use, but I can use Chopper, and that is going to help boost the fleet. That is something that we're going to be taking advantage of. Captain Rex can't use, but I can use Rebel. I have a number of Rebels that don't have relics on them yet. Snips I can't use, and Anakin, Mace, Shakti, can't use those. Kelleran I can't, but I can use a Jedi Lightspeed token. That is going to knock another character off. There's also Grandmaster Yoda here. We have 8th and 9th, not relevant for me. 5th and 7th, same deal. 2nd, no, but I can use an Empire. I have several not stormtroopers, but I have several troopers that are not at relics. I'm just going to save some of them. I was going to do like short trooper, range, snow trooper for the Eidenkron. I'm just going to hold off on a little bit because that's Kairos now that I don't have to put towards those characters, and I can instead just use the lightspeed token. Then we have more that I can't with Princess Leia, but I can use Farm Boy Luke. He's somebody I've never taken up to relics because there's no reason to. Neither of those I can use. Droid, I actually think I am done with droids. No. There's like IG-12 or whoever. There is a droid that I could take up with this one, so that one's relevant. Those are not. Bounty Hunter, I can use. I have one Bounty Hunter left, but I can't really because, well, it's Grief Cargo, but I'm also getting rewarded Grief Cargo one, so that's a little redundant. Mandalorians, I'm completely, well, that's the Mandalorian. Cardoon, I can utilize this, and I can utilize both of these. So there's a number here that are actually going to be relevant to my account. That may be the case for a lot of players, but it means I'm going to be able to rapidly take up the rest of my roster to relics by taking an advantage of these quests, and I'm hoping for similar results in the forthcoming eras throughout the year, that we can just very quickly knock off some of the rest of my roster. What I think I might do, though, in order to save some resources, is I might wait until the next era before and see what the next announcement on Quest is going to be before I start pushing more characters up. Because I would like these Lightspeed tokens to do the bulk of the work for me if possible. Now, Pillars of Seasonality, there's nothing really to cover here. This is more talking about their philosophy behind all these changes, and I'm fine with it. Whatever. But that was a ton of information. This video, I'm sure, is going to turn out to be quite long, in the 20 to 30 minute range. Try to make it as quick as possible and not go too in detail. I hope I actually succeeded on that. But keep an eye out on the kit videos. We'll be releasing all of those in the... I don't know how long it'll take me to get to them, but we're going to try and do maybe one every other day or so and just kind of parse them out. Maybe we'll do some other things in the meantime. There's a couple other things that I've had planned that I would like to break up some of the monotony of similar type of video releases if I can. So thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other, everybody. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.